The movie begins during World War II, wherein a group of young British soldiers is walking on the street when suddenly, the Allied soldiers shoot them. They try to escape the gunshots, but only Tommy Jensen survives. He runs away from the location, only to discover that more Allied soldiers guard the area to shoot to kill anyone they see. Because of that, Tommy shouts at them, saying that he is English and not German. Technically, a battle with France is going on, and the Allied forces are losing against the German army. As Tommy shouts, the Allied soldiers stop shooting and order Tommy to join with others in retreating to Dunkirk. Tommy does not hesitate to come out behind the dumpster and run toward them. Afterward, he goes to the beach, where he discovers thousands of troops awaiting ships for evacuation. He gets shocked upon seeing them, but what surprises him the most is the vacuum bombs falling out from the dive bomber plane to kill them. Since that is the case, Tommy tries to avoid it as he watches some of the troops killed by the surprise attack. Then, he finds an area to urinate but stops when he sees Gibson, an aloof soldier burying a body on the sand. So, Tommy approaches and tries to communicate with him, but instead, Gibson gives Tommy water to hydrate and continues burying. Tommy has no choice but to accept it and shut his mouth. In Weymouth, a civilian sailor Dawson comes preparing his boat Moonstone to set out after talking to a Royal Navy. He is requisitioned to give life jackets to the troops at Dunkirk together with his son, Peter. Since they only have one vulnerable mole that can accommodate limited people, the Royal Navy needs help to get civilian vessels into Great Britain and save the troops. This mole is set for embarking on a deep draft ship so Luftwaffe dive bombers can't shoot at them while they are at sea. So, Peter begins helping his father to strip the Moonstone and load the life jackets inside. While preparing, Dawson's teenage hand, George, appears and looks at Peter with confusion. Therefore, Peter informs him that they are about to sail for Dunkirk as per the Royal Navy's request. After hearing the information, George impulsively gets into the Moonstone and joins sailing with Dawson and Peter. He tells Dawson that he can be helpful in war, so he does not need to worry. Because of that, Dawson lets George come with them and begins maneuvering the Moonstone, leaving the Royal Navy behind, who is about to check up on them before sailing. In the air, 2 Spitfires receive an order from their Fortis leader to stay down at 500 feet to leave their fuel for 40-minute fighting time over Dunkirk. They are also commanded to keep an eye on the gauge to protect themselves from any attack the Luftwaffe dive bombers may do. The 3 Spitfires continue guiding their perimeter when suddenly, they see 2 Luftwaffe dive bombers surrounding them. So, Farrier George Mills takes the initiative to shoot one of them until it falls to the sea. Afterward, Farrier George radios the 2 Spitfires, saying he successfully clears the air. Since that is the case, he immediately informs the Fortis leader that one Luftwaffe dive bomber is down and the other Spitfire will take care of the last one. However, they notice that the Fortis leader is not talking on the radio, so Farrier George asks Fortis 1, Collins, who tells him that Fortis leader's aircraft falls to the sea, and they have no idea whether he survives or not. Afterward, Farrier George discovers his gauge is broken, so he favors Fortis 1 to let him know his gallon since they have the same fuel. At Dunkirk, Tommy and Gibson discover a fatally injured man on a stretcher. Then, they come up with the idea to carry him to get aboard a hospital ship, so they quickly take him and run. But upon reaching the hospital ship, a petty officer aggressively orders them to get off the boat and back on the line. Tommy is supposed to move but stops when Gibson calls his name. Gibson then tells Tommy to hide under the bridge as they are about to sneak on the ship once it maneuvers. So, Tommy follows him and accidentally hears a conversation of high-ranking officers talking about taking only 40,000 men with them to fight against the French army and leaving the remaining troops behind in Dunkirk. Although they want them to take back the whole army in Great Britain, they have no choice but to limit the soldiers that can get into the ship because they don't have enough vessels to carry them. After talking, the dive bombers re-attack. Most soldiers are killed, including the only ship they have that sinks after it is bombed. As a result, the Highlanders inside the ship quickly jump off to save themselves, and Tommy saves Alex, one of the Highlanders. At sea, Dawson sights a shivering soldier sitting on his wrecked ship after it falls to the sea. Because of that, he orders Peter and Gibson to rescue him. Once he safely gets into the Moonstone, Dawson asks his name, but the shivering soldier refuses to talk. Dawson then lets him calm as he notices that the shivering soldier is shell-shocked. On the other hand, George suggests that the shivering soldier get inside and offers him a cup of coffee, but the shivering soldier only shoves it. So, Dawson orders George to let him stay on the deck since he is still in shock. Later, the shivering soldier finds out that the Moonstone is sailing for Dunkirk, causing him to panic and plead with Dawson to take him to England. But Dawson says they need to go to Dunkirk first and suggests he rest inside. At Dunkirk, Commander Bolton orders the Highlanders to get into another ship. This includes Tommy and Gibson since they hide under the bridge and get to join the Highlanders swimming after they jump off the boat. Finally, Tommy and Gibson are out on the beach and luckily get inside a British destroyer to return to Great Britain. They can eat something and jam with other Highlanders. But Gibson seems uncomfortable inside, so he stays outside while Tommy and Alex eat. While eating, the British destroyer is attacked by a torpedo en route to Britain. This causes the ship to sink as the Highlanders gradually get drowned. On the other hand, Gibson is about to get off the ship when suddenly, he realizes that Tommy and Alex are inside after hearing their voices. So, Gibson quickly opens the hatch to help them out. Because of that, Tommy and Alex are safe from getting drowned. But even though they survived the attack, they soon find out that they will return to Dunkirk and must cross the English Channel. At sea, Dawson orders George to see the 3 Spitfires going toward Dunkirk to defend the Allied troops' evacuation. Suddenly, they hear the shivering soldier shouting inside the room, pleading to let him out. Alarmed, Dawson commands Peter to let the shivering soldier out. But when Peter opens it, the shivering soldier already escapes and is now behind Dawson. He tells him to turn around and get him to England, but Dawson refuses, saying he has a job to accomplish at Dunkirk. Because of that, the shivering soldier attacks Dawson in an attempt to control the Moonstone. On the other hand, Peter and George join their scuffle to stop the shivering soldier from attacking Dawson. However, George unexpectedly injures himself, causing him to suffer a brain injury. Peter quickly takes care of George, who later realizes he's going blind due to his fatal injury. Meanwhile, Farrier George sees that Fortis 1 decides to ditch as he gets hit by a bandit during their dogfight. Since that is the case, Farrier George has no choice but to take down the bandit himself. He takes risks to continue defending the evacuation as he sees more bandits coming. Later, Tommy, Alex, and Gibson are back at the beach together with the Highlanders. While resting at the shore, Alex suddenly sees a group of Highlanders regiment, so he tells Tommy and Gibson to follow him. Afterward, Alex asks the Highlanders regiment where they are going and learns they will hide in a beach trawler because the high tide is about to happen. They will wait for it to refloat so they can leave Dunkirk again. So, despite knowing that the beach trawler in the intertidal zone is outside the Allied perimeter, Alex, Gibson, and Tommy still join the Highlanders regiment. Once they reach the trawler, they suddenly hear gunshots coming at them, and Gibson notices that it is German troops using the trawler as their target practice. Because of that, he informs everybody not to shoot back because the German troops do not know they are inside. The Highlanders regiment believes Gibson and keeps silent. As they wait, they unexpectedly notice the water entering the trawler through the bullet holes. So, the Highlander soldier attempts to plug it when a gunshot suddenly shoots his eyes, causing him to shout in pain. As a result, the Highlanders regiment decides to help each other plug the trawler. However, they discover it is too heavy, so one of them suggests getting out to lighten the boat. Since that is the case, Alex tells everybody that Gibson is the person that must get off the trawler because he is a German spy. He also tells them that Gibson remains silent because he can't speak English. If Gibson does, his accent will eventually reveal that he is German. It turns out Alex was right all along. Gibson is actually a Frenchman who stole the name of a British soldier before burying the body. But Alex thinks he killed the British, so Tommy steps in and explains that Gibson took the name to avoid suspicion. He also says that Gibson is just like them and is counting on the British to save them. However, the Highlanders regiment still chooses to take Gibson out of the boat. This causes Gibson to fight back until they later realize that deducing weight is no longer helpful because the boat is beginning to sink due to several bullet holes. At sea, Dawson and Peter see Colin's Spitfire landing at sea, so they immediately rescue him and take him inside the Moonstone. Afterward, Peter takes Collins inside and gives him a towel to dry. As Peter hands Collins the towel, he finds George dead on the floor. As a result, he breaks the news to Peter that George is hopeless. Peter is clearly upset, yet he acts as if he is unaffected by it and continues to do his boat work. Soon after, as he is tying up the rope he rescued Collins, the shivering soldier wonders how George is doing. So, he tells George a fib, that he'll be fine soon. Peter is intended to head back inside, but he pauses when he spots a nearby minesweeper sinking after being bombed by a dive bomber. This prompts Dawson to steer the Moonstone toward the stranded soldiers in the water and save them. Back at Dunkirk, Commander Bolton and Colonel Winnant see small vessels from afar. This causes them to cheer along with the Allied soldiers because, finally, they are going home. Meanwhile, the Highlander regiment decides to jump ship, only to find themselves in the middle of the ocean. Thankfully, they come across smaller vessels, and Tommy orders Gibson to jump ship as they swim for one. Gibson then follows Tommy but stops when he realizes he is entangled in chains, causing him to get trapped inside and drown. On the other hand, Peter comes to the rescue and takes Tommy to the Moonstone right away. Landing outside the barrier, Farrier George has just destroyed the last remaining Luftwaffe dive bomber, protecting the ships and troops below. In light of this news, the Allies' troops applaud since they no longer have to panic and abandon ship anytime they spot a dive bomber overhead. Meanwhile, Commander Bolton has found peace after clearing the beach of the Allies. With Colonel Winnant, he will be the last to leave. However, just as they are about to board the ship, Commander Bolton decides to remain on the shore to supervise the French evacuation. On the other hand, Peter visits the Weymouth Herald to have a local writer write up George's heroic evacuation volunteer work. After a long journey on the train, Tommy and Alex arrive in Woking to be greeted by a hero's welcome from the locals. At the same time, Tommy reads from the newspaper about Churchill's speech to the House of Commons, in which he praised God for the miraculous rescue at Dunkirk. He also finds out that Churchill is reminding the public not to forget the sacrifices made by the soldiers at the Battle of France. The movie ends with Farrier George gliding over the Dunkirk beach before he runs out of fuel. Then, he sets the aircraft on fire and gets arrested by the Germans, who take him as a prisoner. As for Peter, he reveals George's heroic status to his father, Dawson, by showing him the newspaper.